Roman stepped into the polished law office expecting nothing. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above, expensive paintings watched silently, and every member of his wealthy family wore expressions of quiet satisfaction. They believed the reading of their father's will would finally erase the disappointing son who had refused to follow their ruthless ambitions. Roman took his seat without speaking, ignoring the smirks surrounding him. The attorney adjusted his glasses before breaking the silence. One by one, valuable companies, luxury homes, investment accounts, and priceless collections were distributed among Roman's siblings. Their smiles widened with every announcement, while Roman waited for the inevitable rejection. Then the attorney paused. The room became unnaturally still. "There remains one final decision intended only for Roman," he said. "You may accept $5 million immediately, but you must surrender every future claim connected to the Ashcroft estate, or you may refuse the money and inherit the estate itself, exactly as it stands." Laughter echoed across the room. His brother shook his head. His sister whispered that the abandoned property was nothing but collapsing walls and unpaid taxes. Even distant relatives exchanged amused glances, convinced greed had finally exposed Roman's desperation. Roman looked toward the attorney, searching for even the smallest hint of emotion. Instead, he noticed something stranger. Beneath the practiced professionalism, the attorney seemed almost anxious, as though the wrong answer would bury something forever. Roman slowly stood, took a measured breath, and declined the millions without hesitation. He accepted the forgotten estate instead. Silence crashed through the office before disbelief erupted. Chairs scraped, voices rose, and mocking laughter filled the air. His family stared at him as though he had willingly chosen ruin over salvation. Roman simply signed the documents, thanked the attorney, and walked toward the door. As he reached the hallway, the attorney quietly whispered, "Your father hoped you would choose exactly this." Roman paused but turned without asking another question. Outside, cold autumn rain began falling, while his amused family celebrated their victory, never imagining the worthless inheritance had just changed everything. Long before the will divided the family, Roman had already been separated from them in every way that truly mattered. As a boy, he wandered the old gardens surrounding the family estate, instead of attending lavish parties where his siblings learned to impress wealthy investors. While they measured success by expensive watches, luxury cars, and growing fortunes, Roman found satisfaction helping the estate's elderly groundskeeper repair broken fences or listening to stories from workers everyone else ignored. His quiet kindness often earned puzzled looks inside a family that admired ambition above compassion. Their father rarely praised emotion. He demanded strength, discipline, and results, believing wealth protected a family better than affection ever could. Roman respected his father deeply, yet he could never silence the uneasy feeling that money without honor eventually became another form of poverty. Every disagreement widened the invisible distance between them. Years later, after joining the family company, Roman discovered contracts deliberately designed to force struggling homeowners from valuable land. Executives celebrated the profits while lawyers buried evidence behind complicated paperwork. During a decisive board meeting, Roman refused to approve the transactions. He argued that building an empire by destroying innocent lives would stain the family name forever. His siblings mocked his principles, calling him naive. His father remained silent for several painful moments before publicly ordering Roman to leave the company and never return. News of the confrontation spread quickly, turning Roman into the family's greatest disappointment. Friends assumed he had thrown away an extraordinary future because he lacked the courage to compete. Even employees whispered that his father had finally abandoned him. What nobody realized was that the older man never stopped watching from a distance. Quiet reports about Roman's modest life reached him for years. He learned that his son never exploited others, never accepted dishonest shortcuts, and never complained despite financial hardship. Hidden behind his cold public image, the father slowly began crafting a secret inheritance that could only belong to someone who valued integrity above unimaginable wealth. Roman never suspected those silent observations would one day reshape his entire destiny. The journey to the Ashcroft estate carried Roman far beyond the polished skyline of the city and into rolling countryside where forgotten roads disappeared beneath towering trees. By the time he reached the rusted iron gates, evening shadows stretched across the land like silent warnings. Thick vines twisted around weathered stone pillars, and the once proud family crest had nearly vanished beneath decades of moss. It was easy to understand why everyone believed this place had been abandoned forever. Roman pushed the heavy gate open, its piercing groan echoing through the empty valley. Wild grass swallowed the cracked driveway, while ancient oak branches leaned over the path as though guarding the mansion from unwanted visitors. The house itself stood proudly despite its decay, its broken windows reflecting the fading sunlight like tired eyes refusing to close. The nearest village was only a few miles away, yet not a single neighbor had offered to accompany him. An elderly shopkeeper had quietly warned him before he left, claiming every owner who stayed there eventually walked away without explanation. Some whispered the estate was cursed, others believed it hid something too dangerous to uncover. Roman dismissed the stories as fear born from generations of rumor, but the unusual silence surrounding the property unsettled even him. Inside, dust floated through narrow beams of light piercing the darkness. Rotten floorboards creaked beneath every careful step, and the faint scent of aged wood mixed with damp stone filled the air. Most rooms appeared untouched for decades, with torn curtains hanging beside shattered mirrors and abandoned furniture slowly surrendering to time. Then Roman noticed something impossible. One corridor was surprisingly clean. The dust suddenly disappeared. A polished wooden table stood perfectly centered beneath an untouched painting. Fresh candle wax rested inside silver holders, and the leather chairs showed almost no signs of age. Someone had preserved this room with extraordinary care. His curiosity deepened as he discovered tiny symbols carved into the edges of a doorway, almost invisible unless viewed from the right angle. At the end of the corridor stood a massive oak door fitted with an old brass lock. Unlike everything else inside the mansion, it looked deliberately protected, as though someone expected Roman to find it eventually. Morning sunlight filtered through cracked windows as Roman finally unlocked the heavy oak door. The hinges groaned in protest before revealing a study that felt strangely untouched by time. Shelves lined with leather-bound books stood perfectly arranged, a mahogany desk gleamed beneath a thin layer of dust, and an old grandfather clock continued ticking with quiet determination. Unlike the ruined rooms surrounding it, this place carried the unmistakable feeling that someone had cared for it until recently. Roman spent hours carefully cleaning the room, brushing away years of dust while examining every corner. As he moved the desk to sweep beneath it, one of the carved legs caught against the wooden floor. A soft click echoed through the silence. He froze. Kneeling beside the desk, Roman pressed gently against the loose floorboard. It lifted just enough to reveal a narrow compartment hidden beneath. Inside rested a single envelope sealed with dark red wax, bearing the Ashcroft family crest. His pulse quickened as he carefully broke the seal. The handwriting belonged unmistakably to his father. "My son, if you are reading this, then you chose character over comfort. That means I was right about you. Do not trust anyone regardless of their name or promises. Protect this estate at all costs. The truth is not hidden in these pages, but within the original architecture of this house. Follow what was built, not what was changed." That was all. No explanation, no map, no mention of treasure or secrets. Only questions. Before Roman could search further, the silence outside was interrupted by the sound of an approaching vehicle. A sharply dressed businessman introduced himself with remarkable confidence and offered an astonishing amount of money to purchase the estate immediately. When Roman politely refused, the stranger doubled the offer without hesitation. By sunset, 2 more buyers arrived. The following morning, lawyers began calling with even larger proposals. Their desperation felt unnatural. Nobody spent fortunes on crumbling buildings unless they believed something far more valuable was hidden beneath them. Roman folded his father's letter carefully and slipped it into his jacket. Whatever waited inside Ashcroft Estate, he was no longer the only person searching for it. Within days, Ashcroft Estate transformed from a forgotten ruin into the center of relentless attention. Luxury vehicles rolled through the rusted gates from sunrise until dusk, carrying developers with polished smiles, lawyers armed with thick contracts, and distant relatives Roman had not heard from in years. Every visitor delivered the same message in different words: sell immediately. Some promised enough money to guarantee comfort for the rest of his life. Others warned that maintaining such a decaying property would bankrupt him. The offers became larger with every refusal, making their persistence feel less like business and more like desperation. The pressure soon changed its shape. Late one evening, Roman found fresh footprints circling the mansion despite the muddy ground leading nowhere. The following morning, tire tracks disappeared into the nearby woods before abruptly ending. His phone began receiving anonymous calls. Whenever he answered, silence lingered for several unsettling seconds before the line disconnected. Then handwritten notes appeared beneath the front door, each carrying the same chilling message: "Leave now. This place was never meant for you." Roman refused to be intimidated, but the warnings grew bolder. Windows were smashed during the night. Someone forced open an old storage shed, searching every shelf before vanishing without taking anything valuable. Whoever entered had not come to steal possessions. They had been hunting for something specific. A few days later, an elderly man quietly approached the estate, carrying a worn leather satchel. Introducing himself as a local historian, he insisted they speak where nobody could overhear them. His voice trembled as he revealed that the mansion itself had never been the true prize. Decades earlier, official maps had been altered, land records mysteriously disappeared, and entire sections of Ashcroft property were erased from public archives. According to forgotten documents he had spent years collecting, the extraordinary value rested beneath the land itself. Before Roman could ask another question, the historian glanced nervously toward the trees. A black SUV sat motionless in the distance. At that moment, Roman understood the terrifying truth. Multiple powerful groups were chasing the same secret, and every passing day brought them closer to finding it before he did. Sleep became a distant memory as Roman devoted every waking hour to deciphering his father's cryptic instructions. The words echoed constantly in his mind. Follow what was built, not what was changed. He stopped searching the obvious places and began studying the mansion itself. Measuring walls, examining fireplaces, and comparing old architectural details, he noticed subtle inconsistencies that no ordinary visitor would have questioned. A hallway seemed slightly shorter than the rooms beside it. A stone column sounded hollow when tapped. The house was hiding its own design. Late one evening, Roman pressed against an intricately carved section of the library wall. A dull, grinding noise broke the silence as hidden gears awakened beneath decades of dust. Slowly, the wall shifted inward, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. Cold air rushed upward, carrying the scent of aged stone and untouched earth. With only a flashlight to guide him, Roman descended carefully until the staircase opened into a series of forgotten underground rooms. Unlike the neglected mansion above, these chambers had been meticulously constructed. Wooden shelves still held leather-bound journals wrapped in protective cloth. Large tables displayed yellowed engineering drawings, detailed family maps, and blueprints of tunnels stretching far beyond the mansion's foundation. As Roman read through the journals, an astonishing story emerged. Nearly a century earlier, one of his ancestors had uncovered something so valuable that powerful business partners attempted to seize it through betrayal and violence. To protect the family's future, they disguised the estate as a financial burden, allowing it to decay in public while secretly preserving everything that truly mattered below ground. Official records were altered, ownership trails intentionally complicated, and false rumors of a curse were quietly encouraged to keep strangers away. Every journal repeated the same warning in different words. Trust only those who choose integrity over wealth. Near the final shelf, Roman discovered a faded map unlike the others. A bold red circle marked an area that did not appear on any blueprint. Beside it, someone had written a single sentence in dark ink. The chamber remains unopened. Only the worthy will complete what we began. Roman folded the map carefully, realizing the greatest secret of Ashcroft Estate was still waiting to be found. Hidden behind a loose stone inside the underground archive, Roman discovered a small steel box untouched by time. Unlike the journals and faded maps, it contained something deeply personal. A portable recorder, several carefully labeled audio tapes, and a handwritten note bearing his father's unmistakable signature.
His hands trembled as he placed the first tape into the aging machine. Static filled the chamber before a familiar voice finally emerged from the silence. "If you're hearing this, then you chose the estate instead of the money." Roman closed his eyes. It was the first time he had heard his father's voice since the funeral. "I know you believed I stopped loving you the day I forced you out of the company. I needed you to believe that. So did everyone else." The words struck harder than any accusation ever had. His father explained that years earlier he had uncovered evidence proving several trusted business partners were secretly searching for the Ashcroft family's hidden legacy. They believed the secret had already been lost, but they never stopped watching every member of the family. If anyone suspected Roman had earned his father's trust, he would have become their first target. "So I made the hardest decision of my life," the recording continued. "I sacrificed our relationship to protect yours." Roman's memories suddenly looked different. Every cold conversation, every public criticism, every painful rejection had been carefully performed to convince dangerous people that Roman was no longer important to the family. "I watched from a distance," his father confessed softly. "I saw you struggle without asking for help. I saw you choose honesty when dishonesty would have made you wealthy. Every report confirmed the same truth. You could not be bought." Tears blurred Roman's vision as decades of resentment dissolved into heartbreaking understanding. His father had never abandoned him. He had been preparing him. The recording ended with one final message. "The last chamber cannot be opened by knowledge alone. It requires the character you spent your entire life building. Finish what our family began, my son." For the first time since arriving at Ashcroft Estate, Roman no longer searched for answers. He searched to fulfill his father's final wish. For 3 exhausting days, Roman studied every journal, blueprint, recording, and faded map scattered across the underground archive. Each clue seemed incomplete on its own, but together they formed a single path. The strange carvings, hidden measurements, family symbols, and his father's final recording all pointed toward the oldest foundation beneath the mansion. Standing before a weathered stone wall, Roman carefully placed the Ashcroft medallion into a circular engraving carved centuries earlier. Nothing happened. Remembering his father's words, Roman removed the medallion and instead rested his hand against the cold stone. A deep rumble echoed through the darkness. Massive gears hidden within the foundation slowly awakened, and the ancient wall split apart, revealing a narrow passage no blueprint had ever shown. At the end of the tunnel stood an enormous steel door decorated with the original Ashcroft crest. As it slowly opened, Roman stepped into a breathtaking underground vault, unlike anything he had imagined. Golden light reflected from neatly stacked bars of precious metals secured inside reinforced chambers. Glass display cases protected priceless historical artifacts, rare coins, handwritten manuscripts, and paintings believed to have disappeared generations earlier. Shelves stretched into the distance, holding carefully preserved ledgers, legal documents, and sealed boxes labeled with dates spanning more than a century. Every item had been meticulously cataloged and protected, creating a silent museum built not for display, but for preservation. Then Roman discovered something even more valuable. Locked inside a fireproof cabinet were original property deeds, mineral rights, government agreements, and court records proving the Ashcroft family legally owned vast stretches of land far beyond the neglected estate. Attached to them were confidential files exposing forged signatures, fraudulent land transfers, bribed officials, and decades of carefully orchestrated corruption. Entire fortunes had been stolen through deception, while innocent families had lost everything. Roman finally understood why powerful people had desperately tried to buy the estate before he uncovered its secret. This was never just a hidden fortune. It was undeniable evidence capable of restoring an extraordinary legacy, destroying powerful empires built on fraud, and rewriting nearly a century of history. At that moment, the inheritance ceased to be a family mystery and became a truth the world could no longer ignore. Roman barely had time to process the astonishing discovery before the estate erupted into chaos. News of the hidden records spread with impossible speed, and by sunrise, the quiet countryside was surrounded by police vehicles, television crews, lawyers, and black SUVs carrying the very people who had spent weeks trying to force him into selling. The secret was no longer hidden. Now everyone wanted control of it. Emergency court orders arrived demanding the vault be sealed immediately. Roman's relatives insisted the evidence had been fabricated and accused him of planting forged documents beneath the mansion. Television commentators repeated the allegations before any investigation had begun, turning public opinion into another weapon against him. Then the attacks became personal. Late that evening, masked intruders broke into the underground passage, determined to destroy the records before authorities could examine them. Roman confronted them inside the ancient tunnels, where echoes of footsteps and crashing metal filled the darkness. During the struggle, one of the attackers accidentally knocked over a sealed cabinet, scattering original documents across the stone floor. Hidden security mechanisms activated instantly, locking every exit and trapping everyone inside. The arriving authorities found Roman protecting the scattered evidence instead of escaping. His action spoke louder than any accusation ever could. As investigators examined the vault, they quickly recognized official government seals, authenticated signatures, and historical records impossible to counterfeit. Every document strengthened Roman's claims while exposing decades of organized fraud. Outside, the conspiracy began collapsing under its own weight. Former business partners turned against one another, desperate to secure immunity before the full truth emerged. One of Roman's cousins confessed to forging ownership records after realizing the evidence inside the vault was overwhelming. Even his older brother, terrified of facing criminal charges, admitted the family had been manipulated for years by corrupt advisors who wanted the hidden legacy for themselves. Watching the arrests unfold, Roman realized the battle was finally shifting. Lies that had survived for generations were unraveling in a matter of hours, and justice was no longer a distant hope. It was advancing with unstoppable force toward everyone who had built their fortunes on betrayal. Months of investigations finally reached their conclusion inside a crowded courtroom where every seat was filled. The evidence recovered from the hidden chamber had been examined by historians, financial experts, government officials, and forensic investigators. Every signature proved authentic. Every land deed matched forgotten public records. Every journal supported the same remarkable truth. The conspiracy that had stolen fortunes and rewritten history for generations could no longer survive the weight of undeniable facts. One by one, the court dismissed every fraudulent claim against Roman. Forged ownership documents were exposed, illegal land transfers were reversed, and the estate was officially recognized as the rightful property of the Ashcroft family under Roman's guardianship. Corrupt developers lost everything they had built through deception. Former business partners faced prison sentences, while dishonest relatives watched years of carefully planned greed collapse before their eyes. Reporters expected Roman to celebrate his victory with extravagant purchases or public revenge. Instead, he quietly returned to the estate where the journey had begun. The abandoned mansion slowly came back to life as skilled craftsmen restored its fading beauty without destroying its history. Hidden tunnels were carefully preserved, and the underground archive became a protected historical collection instead of a private treasure. Roman established the Ashcroft Legacy Foundation in honor of the ancestors who had sacrificed wealth to protect truth. Using the legally recovered assets, he helped families whose land had been stolen decades earlier, funding scholarships, restoring neglected communities, and preserving historical sites that corruption had nearly erased forever. Standing on the mansion's front steps, Roman realized the greatest inheritance had never been the gold, the priceless artifacts, or the enormous fortune hidden beneath the estate. It was the responsibility to protect a legacy built on integrity. The family that once mocked him for choosing a worthless inheritance had spent their lives chasing money. Roman had chosen character instead, and in doing so, inherited something infinitely more valuable than wealth alone. A year later, the Ashcroft estate no longer stood as a forgotten ruin hidden beneath overgrown trees. Laughter echoed through the restored gardens. Children explored the carefully preserved museum, and visitors wandered the historic halls with quiet admiration. The mansion that had once symbolized loss and betrayal had become a place where history, truth, and hope were shared with everyone willing to listen. Roman stood alone on the front terrace as the afternoon sun painted the countryside in shades of gold. Watching families walk through the estate, he remembered the day he had rejected millions of dollars for a crumbling property everyone believed was worthless. At the time, even he had questioned whether he had made the right decision. Now the answer surrounded him in every restored room, every grateful smile, and every life rebuilt because the truth had finally been uncovered. His father's final lesson echoed in his heart more clearly than ever before. Wealth could attract greed. Power could inspire fear, but character revealed treasures that money alone could never uncover. The hidden fortune had changed Roman's future, yet the greatest gift had been discovering the man his father had quietly believed him to be all along. As the last visitors departed, Roman wandered back into the restored study. Everything looked exactly as it had generations earlier. The polished desk gleamed beneath the evening light. The grandfather clock marked another passing hour, and the shelves of carefully preserved books stood in silent dignity. While adjusting an old family portrait, he noticed something unusual. Tucked neatly behind the heavy wooden frame rested a small cream-colored envelope sealed with the original Ashcroft crest. His name was written across the front in his father's unmistakable handwriting. Roman smiled quietly, but made no attempt to open it. Some mysteries, he realized, were meant to wait until the right moment. As the evening light faded through the tall windows, the camera lingered on the unopened envelope, leaving one final question suspended in the silence. Perhaps the greatest inheritance had not revealed its last secret after all.